Tonight, you might put a baby to sleep in a warm room, a safe crib, a closed door, maybe a baby monitor glowing nearby. Now remove all of it. No crib, no electricity, no medicine, no walls keeping danger outside. Go back tens of thousands of years. A mother sits beside a fading fire, holding a newborn against her body. Beyond the light is darkness, cold, predators, and uncertainty. And in her arms is one of nature's most helpless infants. It cannot walk. It cannot feed itself. It cannot escape. So, how did prehistoric humans keep their babies alive? The answer begins with a strange evolutionary problem. Why are human babies born so helpless? To understand how prehistoric parents kept their children alive, we first need to understand just how unusual a human baby really is. A newborn horse can stand and begin moving within hours. A newborn chimpanzee can cling tightly to its mother as she travels. But a newborn human? It can't walk. It can't crawl. It can't feed itself. It can't even reliably support its own head. For months, almost everything it needs must come from somebody else. And one major reason is our extraordinary development. Humans evolved exceptionally large, complex brains. But brain growth doesn't simply finish before birth. A huge amount of development continues throughout infancy and childhood. Childbirth itself also places constraints on how large and developed an infant can be at birth, while maternal energy demands impose additional limits. The result is an evolutionary trade-off. Humans gain something incredibly powerful, a brain capable of language, planning, imagination, and complex cooperation. But that came alongside an extraordinarily long period of childhood dependency. Now imagine that dependency in the Stone Age. There are no antibiotics, no heated homes, no emergency room. Your infant cannot escape a predator, find food, or protect itself from cold. If danger appears, somebody must move it. If it is hungry, somebody must feed it. If it is vulnerable, somebody must stay close. Keeping such a helpless creature alive required an enormous investment of time and energy. So how could one prehistoric mother possibly do all of that, while also finding food and surviving herself? Here comes the first major surprise. She usually wasn't the only one doing it. Humanity's solution to the helpless baby wasn't a stronger mother. It was more hands. Here comes one of the biggest differences between humans and many other primates. A human baby could have more than one caregiver. Anthropologists call this alloparenting, and humans are often described as cooperative breeders. Mothers are essential, but fathers, grandmothers, older siblings, relatives, and other trusted members of the group can also contribute to childcare. That changes everything. Imagine a prehistoric mother who has carried her infant for hours. She's exhausted. She needs food. She needs water. She needs to gather plants, process meat, or simply rest. If she were completely alone, every one of those tasks would become harder. But now imagine another pair of hands reaching out. The baby moves to a grandmother. Later, an older sibling watches it. A father carries it while the mother eats. Another trusted adult keeps it close while she works. Studies of some modern foraging societies show just how extensive shared infant care can be. These communities are not perfect replicas of Paleolithic life, but they demonstrate something important. Human childcare can function as a network. And that may have been crucial for raising offspring with unusually long periods of dependency. Our ancestors didn't solve the helpless baby problem by making mothers capable of doing everything. They distributed the cost. Food could be shared. Protection could be shared. Attention could be shared. And, most importantly, the baby could be passed from one safe pair of arms to another. Because for a prehistoric infant, being held wasn't simply affection. It solved another dangerous problem. Unlike a baby chimpanzee, a human newborn couldn't just cling to its mother's fur while she moved. So if the tribe wanted to travel, someone had to carry it. But sharing childcare only solved part of the problem. A prehistoric group still had to move. They walked to find food, followed animals, gathered plants, collected water, and sometimes shifted camp entirely. A chimpanzee mother has a useful advantage. Her infant can grip her fur and cling to her body. Human babies can't do that. So wherever the adults went, someone had to physically carry the child. Against the chest, on the hip, on the back, and prehistoric parents may eventually have used simple carriers made from perishable materials such as hides or plant fibers, materials that rarely survive archaeologically. One fascinating clue comes from Arma Verana cave in Italy, where archaeologists discovered the roughly 10,000-year-old burial of an infant nicknamed Neve. The arrangement and wear of perforated shell beads found with her have been interpreted as possible evidence of a decorated baby carrier. We can't assume every prehistoric family used the same technology, but the idea makes perfect sense. A carrier frees the hands while keeping a helpless infant close. And being carried does something interesting to babies even today. Research has found that infants can become calmer when picked up and carried by a walking caregiver, with reductions in crying and movement accompanied by physiological changes. For prehistoric parents, that could have been enormously useful. A carried baby stayed close to warmth, close to protection, and mobile when the group needed to move. So carrying wasn't merely transportation. It was survival technology. But even the safest pair of arms couldn't solve the next problem. A rapidly growing human brain demanded enormous amounts of energy. And there were no bottles, no formula, no baby food aisle. So what exactly did prehistoric humans feed their babies? Keeping the baby close solved one problem. But now came another. How do you feed a rapidly growing human brain when there are no bottles, no formula, and no baby food? For prehistoric infants, breast milk was central to survival. It provided energy, nutrients, fluids, and immune components during a period when the child was extraordinarily vulnerable to infection. And in many hunter-gatherer societies studied by anthropologists, breastfeeding continues for several years. That doesn't mean every prehistoric mother followed the same schedule. But before modern alternatives existed, breastfeeding would have been enormously important. It also had another advantage. Frequent breastfeeding can delay the return of ovulation after childbirth, contributing to longer intervals between births under certain conditions. But eventually, milk alone wasn't enough. The child needed complementary foods. And this is where prehistoric parenting might make a modern parent uncomfortable. No blender, no packaged puree, no soft cereal. Instead, caregivers in many traditional societies have used premastication. An adult chews tough food first, softening it before giving it to the child. Meat, roots, other foods that tiny mouths couldn't easily process. Simple, messy, but practical. And notice something important. The person preparing that food didn't always have to be the mother. Another caregiver could help. An older sibling, an aunt, a father, or someone whose role in human survival may have been far more important than most people realize. A woman who could no longer have children herself, but who might spend years helping someone else's children survive. The grandmother. And this brings us to one of the strangest features of human life. Grandmothers. Human females can live for decades after their reproductive years end. From an evolutionary perspective, that raises an intriguing question. Why maintain a long post-reproductive lifespan? One influential explanation is known as the grandmother hypothesis. Anthropologist Kristen Hawkes and her colleagues studied the Hadza of Tanzania and observed that older women could make important contributions to food gathering, including digging calorie-rich underground tubers. And that food didn't necessarily benefit only themselves. It could help feed children and grandchildren. Imagine what that might mean in a prehistoric family. A mother is caring for a newborn who requires constant attention. Meanwhile, an older child still needs food. Grandmother goes foraging. She returns with resources the child couldn't obtain alone. Suddenly, the mother has help supporting multiple dependent children. And evolution doesn't only operate through having more offspring yourself. Helping close relatives survive and reproduce can also contribute to the continuation of shared genes. This is one reason researchers have explored whether grandmothering helped shape human longevity. But we should be careful. The grandmother hypothesis is influential, not the only explanation for menopause or our unusually long lifespan. Still, it reveals something powerful about human survival. An older woman who could no longer give birth was not necessarily finished contributing to the next generation. She could carry, gather, teach, protect, and help feed grandchildren. In the Stone Age, experience itself could be a resource. And grandmother wasn't the only backup. Once you zoom out from mother and child, you discover something even bigger. The entire camp could become a childcare network. Now, zoom out from the mother, the father, and the grandmother. Look at the entire camp. There are older siblings nearby, aunts and relatives preparing food, adults repairing tools, children playing beside the fire, people leaving to forage, and others returning with resources. In a social world like this, childcare doesn't have to belong to one person. Anthropologists call caregivers other than the biological parents alloparents, and studies of some foraging societies show that children can receive substantial care, attention, and physical contact from multiple people. Again, modern hunter-gatherers aren't living fossils of the Paleolithic, but they demonstrate what human cooperative childcare can look like. Imagine the system as a relay race. Mother needs to gather food. Someone holds the baby. One caregiver becomes exhausted. Another pair of arms takes over. A toddler wanders toward danger. An older sibling or nearby adult pulls them back. The group begins moving camp. Someone carries the infant while others transport food and tools. No single person has to perform every task at the same moment. Food can be shared. Attention can be shared. Protection can be shared. Even knowledge about raising children can be shared. And this may help explain how humans manage something evolutionarily extraordinary. Multiple dependent children at different ages. A mother could have a newborn, while an older child still required years of food, protection, and teaching. That's an enormous burden for one individual. But distribute that burden across a social network, and suddenly, the impossible becomes possible. Human childcare wasn't simply mother and baby. It was a survival system built from many hands. And that system may have done far more than keep individual babies alive. It may have helped reshape the evolution of our entire species. But this childcare network didn't just solve a parenting problem. It may have helped make the human way of life possible. Think about the challenge. Human children don't become independent quickly. Their brains continue developing for years, and they need food, protection, teaching, and social support long after infancy. Now imagine a prehistoric mother with a newborn, a 3-year-old, and an older child who still depends on adults. One person has limited time and energy, but a group? That's different. A grandmother can gather food. A father can carry the infant. Older siblings can watch younger children. Other trusted adults can share resources and protection. The cost of raising a slow-growing human child becomes distributed across many people. And that may have had consequences far beyond childcare. To make this system work, humans needed to recognize relationships, remember favors, share food, build trust, communicate intentions, and cooperate with people beyond the mother-infant pair. In other words, our unusually dependent children may not simply have required cooperation. They may have strengthened the evolutionary importance of cooperation itself. A helpless infant became a social project. Keeping that child alive could involve an entire network of relationships. And generation after generation, the children raised inside those networks became adults capable of participating in the same system. But now comes the strange part. For most of our evolutionary history, childcare likely happened in environments where other people were frequently nearby. Then, remarkably recently, many humans changed the arrangement. We kept the helpless baby. We kept the sleepless nights. We kept the enormous demands of parenting. But many families lost something their ancestors often had: the village around them. Now imagine the same helpless human baby, but in a completely different world. It's colme. No la m. The baby is crying. One exhausted parent walks back and forth across a quiet apartment while everyone else is asleep. No grandmother beside the fire. No older sibling nearby. No trusted adult reaching out to say, "Give me the baby, you sleep." This is where modern parenting creates a strange evolutionary contrast. We have made childhood dramatically safer in many ways. Clean water, modern medicine, warm houses, vaccine, emergency care, food available without hours of foraging. A prehistoric parent would probably consider these advantages almost unimaginable. But something else has changed. For much of human evolutionary history, childcare likely occurred within social environments, where mothers weren't always the only available caregivers. Today, many families live far from relatives or raise children primarily within small nuclear households. The physical dangers decreased, but the social network can become smaller, and that creates a remarkable paradox. We made babies safer while sometimes making parenting lonelier. The baby monitor can tell you that your child is crying. It cannot pick them up. The washing machine can save hours of labor. It cannot hold the baby while you sleep. Technology can reduce work. It cannot completely replace another pair of human hands. And that's what makes the final piece of this story so important. Maybe prehistoric parents weren't simply tougher than modern parents. Maybe they had something many modern families struggle to recreate. They had other people. And once you understand that, the survival of every helpless baby in your family tree begins to look very different. Now return to the baby from the beginning. Helpless, hungry, unable to walk, find food, or protect itself. At first, that sounds like an evolutionary weakness. But perhaps we've been looking at it the wrong way. Because beside that vulnerable baby was something extraordinarily powerful. Other humans. A mother could feed it. A father could carry it. A grandmother could gather food. Older siblings could watch it. Other trusted adults could provide another pair of hands when someone was exhausted. Human survival wasn't built around making babies independent as quickly as possible. It was built around keeping dependent children alive long enough to develop something remarkable: the human brain. And that required cooperation, generation after generation, baby after baby. So prehistoric parents weren't necessarily superhuman versions of us. They faced hunger, exhaustion, illness, accidents, and dangers modern parents rarely encounter. But childcare could be embedded within a wider social network. And now think about what that means for you. Every person alive today stands at the end of an extraordinary, unbroken chain. Thousands of generations of babies came before you. Every one of them was once completely dependent on someone else. Someone fed them. Someone protected them. Someone kept them warm. Someone carried them when they couldn't move themselves. If that chain had failed even once in your direct ancestry, you wouldn't be here. Humanity didn't survive because our babies were strong. We survived because when our babies were weak, someone else picked them up. And perhaps that is one of the oldest lessons our ancestors ever left us. It never took just a parent to raise a human. It took other humans,